All right, bring your attention back to the moment, if you would, please. Let us proceed with this afternoon's discussion. Now, as we were discussing earlier, the hidden design or designs of reality are revealing themselves, and or people are discovering many new truths. Truths that are very liberating, truths that are also very disturbing and discombobulating. Discombobulating because all people on the planet are up against a confrontation of what is really real. And it is not always easy to make a psychological, mental adjustment to drop old beliefs that have had millennia of investment in them and to take on the new frontier. Yet this is what you are on the verge of, these paradigm-shattering discoveries. And we'd like to, this part, talk a little bit more about how many different directions these discoveries are coming from, what prognostications they will have for the year 2015. We usually talk about 2015 in December, but we'll give a little bit of a headline here in the month of November. And as George and we were saying earlier, mid-December, you are going to have the Uranus-Pluto square. This, we believe, is number 6 or some such, and then this is going to be followed 3 months later, 3 moons later, by another. That's a lot of energy of confrontation and dismantling to have in a short amount of time, considering that you had the real USA shaking aspect occurred in April of 2014. So looking ahead, putting all politics aside, putting aside who represents what and who's right and what is important, putting all of that aside, we see that the next 4 months, 5 months from now till the end of April are going to rattle the world in ways that have not occurred before. Because the pressures that are beyond taking sides, the pressures, the forces of a higher nature are going to compel all of humankind to reconsider every aspect of life. And there are many, many, many people who know many things. The time will come when all of those pieces will start to be presented in a unified front. The internet, as problematic as it is and as infiltrated as it is a double-edged sword. It has served to help provide various pieces of the large puzzle to be offered to public domain. And as we have suggested, there are people who have professional achievements, and they stand to lose all of it because they are taking a stand, an unpopular stand, and they are saying, this is what it looks like is occurring. Forget what we believe. This is what it looks like. And there are more and more scientifics who have studied some of the data from satellites, from the rovers, from the various probes and explorers. Well, they are not inclined to sell their soul for political correctness. And it's quickly creating a consensus where large groups of researchers have said that Earth has been colonized. And one lady said, who are the colonizers? General, when we speak of the colonizers, we are speaking of those who create empire. When you're talking about empire, you are undoubtedly on Earth talking about the Anunnaki, those who to Earth from heaven came. That does not preclude other visitors, of course, including we Pleiadians. But we as Pleiadians are not colonizers. We do not go in and set up a reality to conform to our desires for wealth and might and power. We are stimulators. We stir things up. We insert realities. We are educators. As Pleiadians, we are ancestors to the human race, in that we have been able to breed with you and to upgrade certain limitations within the human DNA. But larger than that, it appears from every walk of life that people are reporting, finally, strange occurrences that have happened throughout the last 50, 60 years. Some of it recent, some of it right after World War II. Some of these reportings include strange sightings, meetings with obvious visitors. Whether those visitors were Anunnaki or not is up for speculation. Many of the visitors that were considered to be not human but still appeared as human were considered to be what is named the tall blondes. That does not always mean they are bright blonde in appearance, but that is a category that they fulfill. Lighter complexion, lighter hair, tall of stature, and they appear to be exceptionally telepathic, able to do as some of your advanced animals can do, whether it is a ladybug or a lion. Some animals are completely and totally aware of their environment. Have you ever noticed that there may be a pesky bug around you, and you say, I've had it, I'm going to get the paper and swat that bug? As soon as you even think it, the bug takes off. Mm-hmm. Have you ever noticed that? And you can play games, like a cat attempting to bat a butterfly, a human attempting to swat some bug, and the bug knows it. And the bug then will play with you. Absolutely. And it will dive bomb you, and then it will disappear, and then you'll wait very quietly with that newspaper or magazine rolled up, or fly swatter or spray raid or whatever it is, and then it will sneak up on you and dive bomb and take off again. The bug's having fun. And yet you think the bug is being pesky. To the bug it looks like you're playing with it. A more effective way, truly, would be to say, bug, do you want me to play with you? I'll wave my hands around for a while, but after 3 minutes, just bug off, leave. The bug will usually leave. So there's this aspect of intelligence that is very, very, very important to consider. Now, when it comes to affecting your reality, we are talking about vast complexities and different agendas and different participations. Some of the speculation that is shocking scientists, really shocking them, is realizing that Mars probably was very much like the Earth at one time. And now it appears to be, in the reality that you view it, with a lot of desolation. George was speaking earlier about the red glow from the Galactic Center. Would you recapitulate that, George, just to remind everyone, and then we'll add something to it.
Okay. So, with the advent of different types of telescopes and then radio telescopes and things that could see outside the visible spectrum, they started looking, at the Galactic Center, and it was a bright red. It was an infrared. It's the brightest area of the sky.
And the Mayans understood that this galactic center was in actuality a dark hole, a black hole, many thousands, we believe, or even more, times the size of your sun. Your sun's quite large. And that it appeared that it was this rim that sort of sucked everything in. And when you have a black hole, there's also, let's say, remnants of radiation. Scientists also understood that the black hole was sending out signals along the entire electromagnetic spectrum, which would mean the slow end from radio waves all the way up to the high end of gamma rays. One could say that is the hole sending out these signals, or is the hole a hole that where signals are broadcast through? It's not the hole so much, it's how the hole is being used and what function it provides. Now, this energy that can be seen with alternative types of telescopes that move beyond visible spectrum, they are picking up a type of radiation. Mars, too, appears to the naked eye at times to be red. And red sometimes is a signature of radiation. Scientists are concluding that there were perhaps wars on Mars because there are residual elements in specific areas around the planet, specifically the Cydonia area, where it appears that nuclear detonations have occurred. This is not unusual to be discovered because there have been many sites on Earth that have been revealed to have had nuclear detonations sometime in the remote past. The problem with presenting this to the world for discussion is that it refutes the official version. And the official version then is supported in all universities around the planet. Therefore, 2015 and 16 and 17, we'll see the massive disruption of higher education. Massively. This can be seen astrologically. How, George?
Well, the planet Saturn,
yes,
which usually puts pressures and makes things more real or more realistic.
Very good.
It is going into the sign of Sagittarius, which does rule higher education.
Very good. And it also rules religion. So as a prognostication, we are saying that stuff's going to hit it really big. 2014 is this turnaround, turning point year. The crossroads are very big. 2015, 16, 17 will be the fallout and the integration of what is being discovered now and what very brave and courageous people are willing to stand on and to say, I don't care if this makes no sense to any of you. From my point of view, I have established credentials in neurophysics, in whatever, far out field, radiophysiology. And we have been visited, and our solar system has been engaged in massive war, and it is probably still occurring today. These conclusions are coming from a purely non-military point of view. Once the military starts to come out and reveal these things, or insiders of a various nature, it's all going to, what's it all going to do?
Break the paradigms down.
Let's see a few separate ones. What's it all going to do? Break the paradigm, yes.
Religion's going to fall.
Religion will fall, and there are those who know this, and so they have a plan, of course, in the drawer to pull out a new way of looking at it. The problem is this. Saturn helps you achieve great maturity, and it's going into the sign of the bigger picture, Sagittarius. By 2017, only those with very, very locked down belief systems and very shut down DNA are going to believe the old stories. Coupled onto all of this, again, we have mentioned that there are codings within your genetic structure. And some of the occurrences on the planet are racing at a hectic rate to mess up the genetic code and to really, really create methodologies where people destroy themselves in a lifetime. And this is, again, the genetically engineered foods that are ubiquitous on the planet. Well, not quite ubiquitous. Let's take that back. Last count, it is the United States that provides the world with the majority of genetically engineered foods. And this is with the assistance of Monsanto. Russia, Mr. Putin, months ago, used his, let's say, aide, Mr. Medvedev, to announce to the world that Russia is large enough and autonomous enough to grow its own food. So it would not be importing foods, specifically genetically modified organisms, from any other country in the world. Europe has banned GMOs, matter of consideration. It appears that there are over 60 countries in the world who have banned GMOs. Where is the U.S. on this?
Pushing it.
Pushing it, exactly. And where's the U.S. on it? You are fighting this issue of labeling. Shall we label it? Well, people can't even read labels. And so the issue is not about labeling. The issue is about allowing. All the studies have shown that when you feed these GMOs to various animals, it's usually the rats who volunteer on some level for these experiments. It's their karma, so to speak. They are curious, and they like to get into toxic substances. If you think about historically where rats hang out. So, nonetheless, they are a noble kingdom, but they are usually the source of experimentation. And they get diseases very fast, they grow tumors, and they find that within the third generation, if you feed GMOs to one generation, by the third generation, guess what?
They can't reproduce.
They can't reproduce, they are sterile. So, in a larger scheme, this is a self-volunteer suicide that will wipe out generations within a very short amount of time. When you are in an adult body and you start eating GMOs, as many of you have over the last, let's say, 15 years, they only showed up in the late 90s, it has a different effect than it does on a developing body. On a developing body, it can be very dire. You will also notice that in the last 15 years or so, since these GMOs really came online, your instances of Alzheimer's and autism have risen off the charts. And let's say anyone in the medical profession who is really alert and sensitive to these extremes will say to you, we don't know what to do. We don't know what to do. We cannot provide enough assistance, caretakers, meals, one-on-one teaching to keep people clean and safe and healthy, because they are not interested in wiping themselves, in showering, or feeding themselves. When the numbers who participate in that experiment grow and grow and grow, you reach a tipping point. There are many who believe that you are already at this tipping point in terms of it's got its own momentum. And tipping point means, did you ever play the game when you were a kid? If you attempt to build a snowman too high, you don't regulate it, what happens? It falls over. If you attempt to build sand and plop wet sand on top of each other, and if it's not properly architecturally designed, it falls over. A tipping point basically means too much has been piled on too fast, and the structure or the ideology cannot sustain it, and it falls over. And there will be a fallout that no one is looking at. Ebola is a false reality. They're wanting you to get all worked up about Ebola so that you will clamor for vaccinations. Vaccinations are simply another way to get you to be a subject of the state, to be afraid, to believe that only your governments can save you, or only your medical systems can save you. These are core beliefs. When in actuality, the initiation into higher consciousness is flowering to unfold the idea of the power of the mind, power of all of the healing abilities and the substances available on earth, and how truly treasured the living library is, and why so many forces from so many places around existence come to visit Earth, some in awe, some in respect, and some to study, and some to steal and manipulate. It has been speculated by some of these cutting-edge thinkers that life ideally would be seen everywhere in the multiverse. Yet if so, why are you so quarantined? And is it that life is so fragile that there are only certain windows where environmental factors and factors of consciousness create windows where life can be sustained? And then is it part of consciousness development to reach a part of evolution and to create substances that they destroy themselves with? That's a pretty mind-expanding picture. These are things to think about because they are all pointing to an eminent discovery that you are really, really, really on the verge of things changing in ways you cannot imagine. People are afraid of CMEs or the economy crashing, or, as we were saying earlier, racial unrest or religious unrest. But it is more expansive ideas that tend to threaten society than anything else. Because once you break out of your old beliefs, anything becomes possible. And as we've been saying, there is this potential for a viral awakening to ripple through people in a matter of days, that suddenly switches them on. It would have nothing to do with them wanting it or finding out about it. It would be a telepathic awakening. It would be a timing mechanism that would set off a thinking process, a realization process. It would be beyond the logical mind, yet if you understood the logic behind it, you could see, let's say, the so-called science in it. It would be a type of super science. it would be an indication that you are breaking out of the lockdown and that you are ready to claim your own autonomy. Remember this, just because groups of people wake up doesn't mean they're all going to wake up with the same ideas. But a wake up, a big wake up, and a big confrontation over hidden truths is going to be a theme for the year 2015. All right, let's now move further into some discussions that we were carrying on. Who would like to ask a question?
Can I ask the piece?
Yes, this is Scott.
Yeah, I was thinking, because of evolution and because of all the races, it seems like there's still conflict. It still seems like there's animosity. There seems to be unrest. I mean, what do we look forward to? I mean, if we have millions of years to catch up, what's happening? What's going to change? What's going to change?
What's going to change, and the only thing that can change, would be people's perceptions of reality. Right now, you point out very correctly that in many parts of the world, there's a lot of conflict about individuals being right over beliefs, often over whose God has supremacy over someone else's God. And that is a type of control, a type of lockdown. Beliefs are agreements that you make with reality, and reality is so conforming and so friendly that it will generally outpicture whatever you believe. And then if you believe something, you will usually be drawn to the area, geophysically, where those beliefs can be most easily supported or played out. And we agree with you that it looks as if various parts of the world are a centimeter away from creating self-immolation or the destruction of others. And you have come so close, time and again, to big destructions, especially in the Middle East. Yet just as the stock market is falsely manipulated and propped up, it's inching up to 18,000 now, reality can be propped up, and probes can be shifted, and nuclear activities especially can be stopped, locked down. And there are, let's say, those in watch mode who are vigilant about being telepathically linked to your thought processes. And there are those who would be stationed in nuclear facilities around the world, and they would appear to be human, and their entire purpose is to operate on a superhuman capacity without revealing any of their skills, meaning by presence only. They can read the thoughts of others who would be led to create nuclear disaster out of turn. Things are very, very complicated, Scott. Now, what's going to change, and how could it change? We said that it's possible to have a viral awakening, a massive shift in consciousness, ripple over the planet in a few days. This would have nothing to do with the internet, although it might start on the internet, meaning that mainstream media may gloss over something, and mainstream media is completely controlled. They know that they will be shut down and someone will lose a job if they mention Fukushima or ancient artifacts or discoveries on Mars or ancient visitors. It's forbidden. It's forbidden. Most people want a job, not their integrity. Most people are willing to compromise on their integrity because they rationalize, well, I have to do this for this. So bottom line, they will all pay. What you are asking about, Scott, is it's possible for an energetic to occur on a purely cellular level, where you would look at as if the God particle within humankind has awakened to give people a God's eye view of themselves, their country, their beliefs, and their reality. How do we describe this? It would be like an instant knowing. For many people, it will be humbling. It will be awe-inspiring. They will know something from the inside that could possibly force them all to lay down all of their violence, all of their anger, and to feel as if the mind of God and the eyes of God are on them and within them. We know these sound like very dramatic hyperboles of sorts. They are the best way we can use to describe something that once it occurs within humankind and starts to ripple and trigger you off, you may get used to eventually this kind of information. And people who are able to integrate it and handle it will find that this kind of direct knowledge, empirical knowledge, is a normal way to interact with reality. What it would do is to humble all beings, because it would equalize you pretty quickly as creatures of the cosmos, as co-creators of existence, as extensions, each and every being, of a prime force of creativity. This is not a man or a woman. It's a force. It's a presence. And this presence is here all around all beings all the time. It's just that you are shut off in your perceptions from experiencing it. So the shift that would stop everyone in their tracks, stop the violence, stop so much, would be a perceptual change that would happen on the inside, a timing mechanism. We know it's possible for it to occur, it's likely for it to occur, and yet it's also dicey. We are not certain if it will occur, because it is up to certain players and dynamics to make discoveries, to bring these discoveries forward. It's not up to we Pleiadians to enforce or to ensure this kind of awakening. In the larger cosmos, we are all on the journey of experience. What we figure out, of course, depends on what we are willing, all of us, to release. What else, Scott?
No, I gotta think on that.
Good. We know you are a big thinker, so we always give you an answer that would give you something to think further about. Who has a question?
I've got a question.
You are?
Leonora.
Say it again.
Leonora.
Leonora? That's a very old-fashioned name, you know. Welcome, Leonora. What would you like to know?
I'm just wondering who is behind all these attacks on people here, or just not just people, the inhabitants of this planet, like the things coming down from the sky, the EMFs, the chemtrails, trying to make us into robots. I mean, what's going on? Why? What's the agenda?
So you are asking about EMFs and chemtrails, the rise of robots. What's the agenda? It's pretty obvious that in your solar system, Earth stands out as being unique, yes?
Yeah.
It's pretty, it's got a lot of water, and if you have the chance to ride around on Earth, whether on a bicycle or a horse or an automobile, you recognize there's some beautiful land and great real estate and lots of resources, and it's quite habitable. And there are those who feel as if that the humans have overrun the planet. And it is very true. You have a lot of humans on the planet, and a large majority of them soil the nest. That is the truth. We're not pointing names at any types or beings, but we tell the truth. And humans tend to get caught up in the experience rather than in their duty to be stewards of Earth. So there are statistical studies that have happened on Earth, and beings who look at Earth and they see that left unchecked, it will not be long before, within a few decades, some project to 2030, 2040, that the humans would overrun the planet with a lack of sanitation and a lack of consciousness. So there are forces, some that want to control the population. Chemtrails certainly do this. They block out solar radiation. They also block out solar communication. Without solar communication, many humans will lose their mind. The EMFs are purposely designed to mess up your electromagnetic energy field so that you are more easily managed, you are confused. And the GMOs, of course, are a slow form of suicide, along with wireless technology and cell phones. So, who's after this? Obviously, it is a depopulation culling program. Doesn't make any difference which country it comes from. It's humans who have been given ideas, and they are not far thinkers. This is one thing you lack as human beings. You lack this extension beyond the moment. And you have been programmed recently with computers and cell phones and all other devices to push a button and to have instant response. You can go buy a heater today and plug it in the wall and push a button. Within a minute, hot air is blasting out at you. It's far removed from having to gather wood and have it dry and then find a place that it would be safe to have a fire and build a fire. We are not advocating that you go back to that experience, but we are saying that modern humans are programmed and conditioned to have an instant response to what they want. This has shortened your span of understanding so that you don't look far beyond the immediacy of what you can push a button for to receive instant gratification. This is also another form of dumbing humans down so that you are more manageable. All of this occurs, Lenora, because there are many beings who understand that humankind is on the verge of a massive paradigm shift, and that it could occur, that crisis, one crisis upon another, upon another, upon another, pushes the human genome to such a degree that it fires off something called a fail-safe mechanism within the human genome, that rather than have you move to slow self-destruct, which you are doing now without awareness, that some code inside, we call it Enki's gift, ripples out, and everyone, or a large majority of the planet, has a massive new understanding of reality. We can not describe what that new understanding would be, because it would be a collection of all of the people of the planet recognizing something bigger about the story that they believe in, that has come from inside. We believe some of your prophecies and some of your books speak of these potentialities. This would be something worth fighting over. It would stimulate a cosmic war of sorts. We are suggesting that the Anunnaki know of this time, and the ancients from long ago foresaw this time as being very dangerous in terms of the players coming to a new level of understanding how the game in existence is played. Anything else, Lenora?
And just the Anunnaki, are those people, are they around us as people, like that you might see in your everyday life?
Are they around you as people in everyday life?
I don't understand if they're still here now.
Say it again, please.
Are they still here now, or did they?
They wouldn't necessarily so much be around you as people, because their numbers, in terms of how many they are versus how many you are, would be vastly different. They are basically long livers, some to millions of years, because of their understanding of chemistry and what it would take to alter a body to live longer through substances and water and various other plants and things of this nature. Some of the Anus are very evolved biologists, botanists, and they would understand what it would take to create components that would extend their life. In this capacity, gold has also been used for life extension. Now, what would be among you would be some of their creations that would look like people, that would act like people, but they could be advanced organic robots. Today you are in a period, and it's really going to splat itself forward next year, of how the robots, just like the drones, are suddenly everywhere and very advanced, not clunky, very advanced. And people are going to start getting the creep factor. First they'll laugh, they'll think it's funny, but then they will not be comfortable with it. So all of this is sort of coming forward, and as people recognize it, they will start to activate inside. Some people who have encountered these human-looking tall blondes that appear to be human, but they may be organic robots or clones or some such, they have felt strange. And you know, some humans are telepathic, and there are some humans who can hear the thoughts of others. Most people do not carry on a conversation between one another on a telepathic level. You chat on phones, you type things out, you talk verbally, etc. But some of these organic robotoids talk to each other on a telepathic level, and if an astute human is in their vicinity, the human may hear them say, "That human is reading us." Now imagine if you were walking down the street, George Ward, or you were in a cafe, and you saw two comely looking people, or three, and they were attractive enough and vital enough to get your attention, that they wouldn't necessarily have the same vibrational rate as other humans. They would stand out slightly, if you noticed. And imagine that you caught the drift of their telepathy, and that they would be talking telepathically about you because you started noticing them. That could freak you out a little bit, yes, George Ward? Yes, this has happened. Where would you find these people? They're not going to be your neighbors, unless, of course, you are living in the Washington, D.C. area. than living around the capital area, or, well, here you do have Research Triangle Park, and that is a deep consideration for sort of an announcement that says, here we are. You call it the Triangle, and many people have pointed to the shape of a triangle as being a signature of some of the visiting ETs. So we would venture to say it's possible to have some around this area, just to keep an eye on others who think that they might pull a quick one, yet next door to them would be living telepathic organic robotoids watching their every move, particularly if they were involved in secret research, nuclear facilities, and any kind of pharmaceutical discoveries, and anything having to do with things that are underground. Whether your mind can conceive of it or not, the Earth is not hollow per se, but it has long been colonized, it has been tunneled, and just because you can't imagine living underground does not mean that others don't live there. You understand that?
Yes.
Yes. So, your questions are very good, all of them. And it shows to us that you are thinking, which is what we want you to do. Because once you start thinking, you do give off an energetic signal, and no one's going to come bother you in general unless you really hit a gold mine. But once you start thinking, you are outside of the realms of control, and you start seeing through things. And this is part of everyone's sole purpose on the planet, because this is humankind's mission during the changeover years. 2013 through 2027. Break out, break through, and see a new dawn about what reality really is. And the more you are attached to things being a certain way, the more stuck you are going to be. So you are all victorious when you can ask questions. And then it's not that we want to answer all your questions so that you are all happy. We answer your questions so that you think in larger terms. You are all safe, and you create your safety by your intention. And it's your auric field, building that auric field every day, that creates your safety and protection. There's all manner of weirdness out there. And there's all manner of black holes opening, and mini black holes, and portals, and strange things. And this is what's upsetting many of the governmental leaders, is that the fabric that has held your paradigm together, your belief system, your agreements, it's all coming apart. It's shattering. It's fraying. It's got holes in it. And so when the G20s or G7s or 8s, whichever numbers agreeing to meet, when they have their secret meetings, and they hide things from each other, so it's not like 20 of them get together and say, guess what's going on? Only 3 or 4 may tell each other what's really going on, and they will keep others in the dark. But the agreement they all have is that it's unraveling, and that strange portals are opening and weird things are coming through, and that the culling problem and the control over humankind, it's working in some capacity, but in another capacity it's a complete failure. Some people are dying, some people are getting sick, while others are adapting, evolving, getting smarter, and seeing through things. This is why the cell phones track everything that you are doing and saying, and they can tell by running your conversations through algorithms who's who and what's what. Lenora, we hope that that gives you a little larger picture.
Yes, thank you.
Our personal advice to you, relax, trust yourself, settle down. It would do you a lot of good to believe that everything will work out for you and for the planet far better than you can imagine. And that sometimes, as a person coming into higher consciousness, you have to hear about some dire things so that you process them through and cancel them. and that you end up choosing a probability of safety, of harmony, and good excitement. Who has a question?
Peace, this is Karen.
Karen, welcome.
Talking about paradigm shift and everything that's going on, I was thinking about a lot of things, and I was thinking this could possibly be a way that this could happen, and I was wondering what your thoughts were on that. All these underground cities that are set up as far as Washington goes, and then there's one in North Dakota and under Denver, and I believe I don't know what I've read, they could be really underground cities with a lot more technology than they're letting us know that's going on.
Absolutely. It's far more advanced than surface people recognize.
And I believe it's set up for the elite, it's not for us. And that our technology is set up on the grid up here where it could be totally knocked out. And like you said, water's set up here, our medicines are all set up on computers, our telephones, our light, our heat, everything, and we're all under their control. If they wanted to knock us out, they could, and in a matter of days, we wouldn't have heat, we wouldn't have water, we wouldn't have electricity, we wouldn't have phones, we wouldn't have anything. And
so it appears, on one level, that those who live on the surface are highly vulnerable.
Right, and the elite would go underground and live and have everything to whatever they needed.
And how excited do you think they are about going underground?
Well, I think, the rich are rich, and they always have been. They're the 1%, and, everybody else is vulnerable to that. But that could totally set a paradigm shift, and which could be, our survival instinct, which could totally turn humanity around, and which could totally, turn the whole world. Instead of us attacking each other, killing each other, we could turn around and help each other, which could totally set the whole world,
That's a wonderful speculation. And do you know that this is what they are saying from one end of the other in Buffalo, that just received anywhere from 5 to 7 feet of snow? They are saying how astounded and marvelous it has been that under these dire situations, help is coming from all directions. Now, the trick is to keep it up. You've all been in weather situations, and yes, it does tend to pull out the best in humans, and people get out their tools and they want to help, and that is the highest level of humanity. It truly is. To reach out, to help each other, and when you help someone else, you know what happens? You release feel-good hormones from the inside.
Right.
Particularly, you release something called oxytocin. And this oxytocin can come about from smelling good smells, eating good food, gently rocking the body, or doing good acts for others. When this chemical component is released in the body, it takes the human experience into pleasure. And once you get into pleasure and gratification, it's a whole nother reality. Now, usually these kind of situations happen when the grid goes down temporarily, when the weather is inclement, and when people band together. Then what happens afterwards is usually the grid goes back up and people go back to listening to or watching the news.
And fear.
And then what happens is their worldview shrinks, yet they think it's expanded by the little screen. Now, we are not saying the grid has to be down to bring cooperation, which if you start picturing any type of cooperation and calling forth the higher image of what humans can move to, then this is contributing to that creation. Because bottom line is, thoughts have power.
Right.
And it doesn't make any difference if you are the chambermaid or the president or the CEO. If you have focused intention and clear vision for the benefit of all, that's going to take precedent over niggly, cheating greed that's going to want to destroy everyone. This is the tipping point for ordinary, unaccomplished people to recognize that they have just as much power as someone who rules the world, because the world is determined by a process of thought creation. You stick with what you are thinking. You all have the potential to be pleasantly surprised. That does not mean that there are no lumps and bumps to go through. We explore those lumps and bumps often so that you cancel them out, or so that you have a clear, unidealistic picture of what you are dealing with, and yet still find the courage to believe your own truths from inside and to believe in goodness in yourself and in others. What else, Karen?
Just, fear from the media, and if you concentrate, it's just to shut you down, and that's,
If you can recognize that, and if other people recognize that, this is a huge victory, because 20 years ago no one did, hardly anyone did. And 10 years ago more and more were discovering it, and now today people know they are being driven by fear. So what they are doing, and it's painful to them, so they are flipping to distractions that create pleasure, which are often self-destructive. That's the problem today, is too many people are creating self-destructive choices because they feel disempowered, they feel disgusted over being lied to. So they check out. Again, the body's center is one of the centers of the brain, is organized by pain and pleasure. This is not the amygdala where you have fight or flight. This is called the acumen nuclei or something like this, and it is a pain pleasure zone. And a lot of things on the planet are psychologically being used to manipulate people to check out and choose pleasure because the pain seems so overwhelming in the media, but not necessarily in personal experience. Would you agree?
just fear of changing jobs, fear of
Yeah.
different way people look, or
Yes, and understand this, Karen. Everyone is telepathic to a degree or another, and you get into those highly telepathic states, and you are informed in the dream state. That is when everyone sort of really gets equalized, and where you get to know things. And people of Earth know that another shoe is going to drop, and they don't know what or how. They know that they're here on the planet for big, big, big stuff, and yet they are terrified that big, big stuff is going to rock their world and change it. That creates a bit of an accordion effect, in and out, in and out. If you don't know how to play the accordion, it just sounds like noise. Yes, and so this is on a cycle, let's say on a psychological, spiritual, psychic level. This is what's confusing people. This knowledge that they get in the dream state, they're not able to articulate it, but they are part of the mass experience. And then day-to-day life, they look around and it feels very confusing, and it doesn't necessarily jive with this other part of the brain. And of course, those who understand how the brain operates and run psyops, this is exactly what they want, to keep you confused, especially with devices and electronically conveyed data. This is the conundrum. This is why it's so important to take charge of your life and to have some quiet time to integrate. And that does not mean sleep state. It means a state of just quietude to build the neural networks so that you can get in touch with the intuition and learn to follow it. The intuition and the integrity of the body. Remember, once you honor your body, once you like your body and love your body and feel privileged to have one, no matter what it looks like, once you start that process it starts miraculously working with you. Anything else, Karen?
No, thank you.
Who has a question?
I have a question.
This is
Well,
Laura. Welcome.
thank you. I have a question about the Anunnakis. You mentioned earlier that they're in empire collapse,
Yes.
and I like to think it's because so many people are waking up. But I wonder if it was just their karma or their history that this is their time to fade away.
We would say
Fighting against their own fate.
more the second than the first. They are not losing power because people are waking up, though they are. They have reached their own crossroads, their own turning point, and they are getting what you call the karmic blowback. They live long time, millions of years, so it's taken them a long time to create this accumulation. Just as the accumulation of an intelligence within a fly or a ladybug would happen dramatically different than it would for consciousness within a human because of the lifespan difference. Yet it would still be just as valid. So what you must understand is that the lifespan difference of some of the Anunnaki, the long livers, they have boxed themselves into a corner, Laura, and it is their time, their sunset years. They have created a lot of havoc, and they are, in some regard, collapsing in and on themselves. Yet there are others within the Anunnaki system who are relieved. They are not all this way. Their leaders who have come to the planet are few in number, considering how many humans there are. Visiting Anunnaki in ancient times, well, the first few batches had less than 1,000. And they, let's say, utilize life forms here to create workers for that very reason. They did not have a large population to draw upon to repopulate other worlds. They invade other worlds by incorporating and adapting various life forms to do their work for them. They create a type of indenturedism. Some would call it slavery. We would say it depends on your point of view. You are all co-creators. We also dare to say that it is worth your considering that some of you have been and are extensions of some of these Anunnaki on a soul level. Remember that your soul does not have an affiliation towards race or gender or cosmic location. Your soul is on an ever-expanding journey of gathering experience and information to, let's say, fulfill the joy of Prime Creator. And what will unfold for many of you in 2015 is a closer feeling within you of what it is like to be an Anunnaki, or to have been under their tutelage on the planet, particularly in the Middle East, or even in the Far East, or even in here in the early years, long ago in North America. We're doing our best to expand the field of consideration on this. What else, Laura?
No, thank you. That's a very complete answer.
Did we answer you good?
Yes.
Good. You're all asking good questions, very good questions, because it means you are thinking in larger terms. Just remember, you are not going to go into space war and kill off these Anunnaki with their behavior. They did bring, according to their records, nuclear weapons to your Earth long ago. And according to their records, the one who brought nuclear weapons to your Earth eventually caused a lot of trouble. He was eventually banished to Mars. And eventually, after he spent a long time on Mars in isolation, this would have been after the destruction, the face on Mars supposedly was built in his honor.
Okay.
It was a long time ago, hundreds of thousands of years ago. So the story is very, very complex. And that being who died a long time ago as an Anunnaki could easily have human extensions of itself all over the planet who would be vaguely connected. Who has a question?
Please, this is Dorsey.
Yes, Dorsey.
You're talking about the
Welcome.
soul, and that triggered a question I had.
What when we say the soul, how do you picture it?
I feel like, well, the soul, I guess, is sort of like in your body, because they say there are thousands of cases where when a person dies, or I guess you could say past change states, that you're 21 grams lighter. And I want to say, is that true? Because they say there are thousands of documented cases.
We would say that it's not so much the soul, it is the life force. And the life force is predicated and made up of your awareness, your consciousness, your Dorsiness. Do you follow this? Mm-hmm. That is not going to be destroyed. That is what leaves the body, and it has a presence in the body. It has a presence in plants and animals. When a plant dies, it looks different, does it not?
Yes.
And if you were to weigh that plant, it would weigh less than it did when it was alive. People would say, well, it's the water content. Well, originally, it's the life force content. Then, yes, things start to deteriorate and they dissolve. So the soul is really located outside of the body. And the life force is part of this soul. And it stays connected to the soul and then occupies various life forms. And when it's finished in the life form, that part of the soul or that consciousness goes back to a central force. It is not dissolved in that central force. It is an aware contributor of that central force. Somewhat like a beehive. Do you understand?
Okay.
One could think of the soul as a beehive, and all the various bees, extensions of that hive. So that hive has its own intelligence, yet ventures far and wide and brings back data and food and nourishment to that hive. It's an example. What else do you want to know?
I was thinking about for like health, because somebody does a lot of health issues, and I heard, I've been reading up on for having a pH, a body's pH of 7.0 neutral.
Yes.
That'll keep you on a more of a healthier state.
It appears to be very important.
And I didn't know if you could elaborate on that.
It appears that on this very basic level of science, that if the body moves to an acidic state, it is thrown off balance, and the unfriendly bacteria, the anaerobic bacteria, all these things will grow to greater proliferation and create problems in a highly acidic state. The problem is lots of the best foods you eat and the things you do throw the body to acid. So by moving towards more alkaline, the soil needs to be for certain substances more alkaline, although there are some things that like to grow in acidic soil, such as hydrangeas, for example. They like things more acidic. Now, the internal terrain of the body is affected by the outside environment, particularly by food and also by your beliefs. So you can eat the best of diet. You eat a lot of vegetables and you live on coconuts, you are going to have a very alkaline type of body. But if you are a worrier and you watch a lot of TV and you eat the best of diets and it's all organic, but you invest then in worrying. Worrying will turn your body acidic just as fast as too many beers or too much alcohol. You understand?
Yes.
Or too much sugar. So it is moderation that's very important. Don't think of yourselves as sinners. Holidays are coming up. You're going to want to dip into some of these more acidic types of foods. Just remember, keep it in balance. Pay attention to how you feel. Notice if you eat too much. You can say, well, I ate too much. I loved every bite, but I can't do that every day. And if you start to create, I want to be in moderation and balance, the inner system will work with you. Our vehicle was sharing with you some tips to stay on the alkaline side. Lemon water and aloe vera and coconut water. All of this can shift completely the inner terrain. Also, there is a doctor named Dr. Mark Serkis. He's been a major contributor to discoveries in health, and he has reported, as have others, on the power of sodium bicarbonate, which translates as baking soda. Baking soda, it has the arm and the hammer on the cover, yes? Mm-hmm. That indicates how strengthening it is to the system. And there are those who have explored this protocol using the alkalizing neutral techniques of baking soda to rid themselves of cancer. Now remember, what works for one person is not always going to work for another, because there are contradictions that occur. Someone can say, well, I did all the baking soda and I alkalized and I did this and this, but then their psychological state or their beliefs may damage what they're doing. And when it comes to getting well, health issues and feeling really good and getting the body in tip-top shape, what prevents it? Often are beliefs about what is possible, beliefs about what you deserve, beliefs about what members of your family experienced as health issues, and then you say, well, therefore this is in my family, and all medical people will say, well, do you have diabetes, do you have cancer, do you have high blood pressure in your family? People will say, well, yes, 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 and then, well, that's fine, but that does not mean that you will create that unless you really believe that you are your parent. And some people do believe they are their parents because they love their parents so much they can't separate themselves from their parents. They think it is a betrayal to recognize flaws in their parents. We'll say this to you, your parents are people. And some people have been unfair to their parents because they saw a few flaws and the parents weren't perfect enough. And other people have parents with so many flaws they won't refuse to see them, and they make their parents over perfect. Bottom line is to look to yourself to say, what do I want? What do I intend as a human being to experience? When you have a health issue, it is always a sign that it's time to change something. Change who you're interacting with, change your beliefs, change your habits, certainly change what you are eating. Often you have to change where you are living, you change your sleeping habits. All of this is under fire. Number of classes David has brought up how this insomnia epidemic is taking over. Well, it's not just adults. Children can't sleep either. And parents are running ragged, wondering what to do with children who are totally overstimulated and they've completely lost their sense of circadian rhythms. A lot of this is too much light in the evening hours, too much electricity, too much stimulation. The body is tricky. It's easy to get one, or it used to be easy to get one, but just because you have a body does not mean you know how to operate it. Remember that. You are all learning, and you will continue to learn in this capacity. So, balancing the body in terms of neutralizing or alkalizing the pH gives you a big advantage. But also then neutralize your thoughts and observe what you are thinking and say to yourself, is this in my best interest to think this, or does this create an upset within me? What else, Dorsey?
That's it. Appreciate it.
So, in the course of expanding your consciousness, would you say, Dorsey, that you have changed some of the habits that you have had in terms of how you experience your body?
Yes, I do.
Good. And would you say that as you've adapted these changes, whether it is using Himalayan salt or whatever, that you have noticed a difference in it's easier to be in the body and to have a human experience?
Yes, I mean, I feel good, energetic. I don't really have any sickness.
Good.
And it's like I'm always positive, so I just feel like I feel good about myself.
Those are really important keys. And Sue says that all the time too, yes?
When I go to bed at night,
What do you say, Sue?
I cross my chest sometimes and I say, I love you, I love my body, I'm grateful for what it does for me.
Does you really good to acknowledge the omnipotent power of the creative force, because that creative force is what rules the Anunnaki and all life forms and all galaxies and all things. Once you realize how massive it is rather humbling to know that you are part of it and that you can see it. Now, you're going to be challenged, of course, but you understand the keys of empowerment. That is gratitude, clear thinking, good laughter, and changing whatever it is that doesn't work for you, slowly, so that you can be having a more fulfilling experience in your human body. That's what it's all about. And as you do this, you rewrite the rules of the game for all players, even into other galaxies. Knowing that you are on the verge of some major discoveries, major revelations, major announcements, major considerations. Be patient, be autonomous, think the best, create the best. We are very enthusiastic about the futures, the possible futures that you can encounter, because they are soul-fulfilling on multiple levels and far better than you can conceive and imagine. Hold your thoughts open for those probabilities to manifest smoothly, easily for humankind. That said, it's been our great pleasure. Good afternoon.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.